Welcome everybody along to Dhammaloka tonight. Welcome to those in the hall here, and also a big welcome to those watching in on the internet. My name is Sheppard, and I'm giving the talk tonight and the meditation. And tonight I'm going to try and talk a little bit about consciousness and just really what it is. And I must admit that I've sort of come upon to do this topic tonight because I was happy enough and really had a beneficial kind of viewing of a YouTube clip by a professor, Donald Hoffman, who is really probably one of the leading edge researchers into consciousness, and I was really quite interested to see just how he talked about it, and just how close I think it is to the Buddhist way of the way that the Buddha talked about consciousness. So I thought it might be a good topic just to talk about tonight, and also just lead in with some of the Buddha's lists that he made around all of this, so that we can put it all in a context and try and just see where consciousness fits in to the way that we live our lives here on this earth, just in this space-time duality that we kind of live in here. Inside this universe is very mysterious, as I'm always kind of talking about here, this very mysterious life that we live, sort of involved and born into this planet, where most of us probably don't really have too much idea of just why it is that we got born or why that we're here. I mean, I think as you start to practice and you start to become more comfortable with questions like this, there's a sort of a settling of your mind that happens that allows you to be quite confident, really, just in the way that you start to see just what this mystery of life is all about. But it is a mystery, isn't it? I mean, just the way that this Earth and the moon that we have, I've just been, and the planets that are running around, I've just been, each morning I've been getting up to walk the dog very early, and it's usually dark for at least a couple of hours before I get home, so I've had the opportunity to have a look at some of the planets, certainly Jupiter and Venus, that have been hanging there in the morning sky. Such a beautiful sights to see. But when you look up and you watch the planets and you know that we're on a planet on the planet Earth that revolves around the sun, and the sun is sort of moving through space, all of this is very much a mystery to us all. There's, probably I don't really know why it necessarily is like that, just except that I think that physics does a reasonable job of trying to work it out. We know a lot more about the universe now these days than probably what the Buddha did even. But the Buddha, this never deterred the Buddha from really looking at what he saw as the truth of these things, because we know, as we practice Buddhism, that we see that all of this that's happening to us here, all of this life that we're living, is in fact a product of our mind. It's our mind that creates this. It's our mind that creates this world, and that's our mind that creates this universe. And we can see that very clearly in our practice when we start to practice, and especially when you get such good teachers as we've got here at the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, with Ajahn Brahm sort of teaching the jhanas and being able to sort of teach these deep states of absorption that we can sort of get into, states of absorption that sort of take us right back into the heart of the present moment. The present moment being a place that we can recognise as a truthful place. Because mostly we're living our lives, aren't we, it's as if we're sort of blurred across the present moment. We live our lives mostly looking back at the past and trying to contemplate and work out what we're going to do in the future. And that sort of happens now to such an extent that we really don't ever really look deeply into the present moment. But this is where the Buddha looked. He looked deeply right into the present moment because he knew that that was the only reality that is there. I mean, anything in the past, we all know, and we can probably basically understand that anything from the past is gone, it's finished. You know, as Ajahn Brahm likes to talk about, it's like when you're carrying around things from the past with you, it's like carrying corpses on your back. It's the way that he, in his humorous way, usually talks about things like that. But it's the same with the future too, isn't it? When we're kind of lost into the future, worrying about the future, having anxiety about the future, or worrying just what might happen tomorrow and all of this sort of thing, when tomorrow hasn't come yet. So all that we've ever really got in reality is this present moment. And this is certainly where the Buddha liked to tell us to look, to make sure that we kind of look directly at this present moment, to really try and understand just the nature of its reality, the way that it is. So the way that it sort of hangs, and all of his teachings really are based around this reality. So what I'd like to do is sort of bring consciousness, the way that our consciousness works, into all of that, just into the truth of the present moment. Because our consciousness is really, well, in the way that this Professor Donald Hoffman talks about it, it really is really right at the back. It's the backstop of all that we kind of can know and see through in terms of the way this world and this earth is created, and the way that we create our lives and create the things in our lives. All of that is it is all part of space and time. And the Buddha, when the Buddha was talking about that, he talked about this in terms of it being dukkha, the first noble truth. And that sort of, when he's talking about that, he's more or less talking about the way that we live our lives with this kind of dual nature of things, where when we grasp or we try to identify with something, there is always an opposite to it. So, in other words, if I look at this little table here and I can feel this and I can say that's smooth, I know that that's smooth because I can juxtapose it against rough. And so that whenever I kind of do smooth, rough is always there as well. If I talk about day, there's kind of, I can always sort of see that against light. And that's the way that our language and our world sort of works. And it works like that even right through into the physical nature of the thing, with matter and antimatter, without sort of getting into all of that. But we know that the physical world itself works in the same way. It has this duality, so that it would seem that when consciousness allows us to shape our world or build our world and create our world in the way that we do, it brings this dukkha or this duality with it, so that we can never really just have one thing. We can't just have happiness, because there's always got to be sadness that sort of comes along behind it as well. So this dukkha is sort of a very important thing. It's the first noble truth. It's the first noble truth that the Buddha spoke about. So it is a very important thing to try and understand. But the way that Donald Hoffman explains consciousness is really through, he says that when we look at consciousness, when we're kind of working with consciousness, we're looking through a lens or a portal of space and time. We have this space and time that we're kind of involved with, and we're looking through a portal of this space and time at our consciousness. And our consciousness, we know, will will present itself really in whichever way we want to grasp it or hold on to it. And even just saying those words, I know they'll be familiar for those that have practiced with Buddhism when we're sort of talking about the grasping nature, the desire and the aversion, that duality, the desire and the aversion that kind of leads to what the Buddha talked about as delusion. So, and that's really what I'm talking about here, I suppose, when we kind of start moving away from the very focused reality of the present moment and we start moving into the blur that moves across the present moment, where we're moving and living a lot of our lives in the past and also into the future, we start to lose the reality of the present moment. And in actual fact, the whole of the meditation process really is about learning how to be present, learning how to practice so that we can keep our mind still in the present moment. So this is really, where I just wanted to talk a little bit tonight about that consciousness. But then when I finish the talk in maybe a half an hour or another 20 minutes or so, I'll kind of also bring this into the meditation for tonight, just so that we can actually start to see how this works, or how you can make it work in your meditation, how you can use your meditation to try and work some of these things out, just to see how to use some of these lists that the Buddha made. And the first list I wanted to start off with was what the Buddha called the 5 aggregates. In Pali he called them the 5 khandhas, for those that really only know it that way. But the 5 aggregates is really a deconstruction of the physical nature of the world. It's a deconstruction of that. So the very first khandha, or the first aggregation, really is what the Buddha called rupa, which means the physical nature of everything. So our bodies, the universe, this building, the world, the universe, anything that has been compounded into the physical. That's the very first khandha, the first aggregation. But then, as he started to deconstruct this, he then moved into what he is just basically feeling. So as we kind of, and I'm going to just look at this a little bit further tonight when we look at the 4 satipatthanas, which are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And feeling is a very big part of those, the 4 satipatthanas. So when the Buddha was deconstructing and doing this work, he was kind of encouraging us to come inside our bodies and to feel inside our bodies, to know what this feeling is like, to be able to feel deeply and sensitively into our nature, into our bodies, using our body. As the Buddha said, he learned everything that he knows about, and everything that he talked about, he said he understood from this fathom-long length of body. So he used his body all of the time. His body was where he studied. He studied the universe inside his body. And that's in a way what he's encouraging us to do. So if we start that deconstruction process for the khandhas, or for the aggregations, the second aggregation is feelings. So this is feelings in the body. And I always see that too. Feelings are always have an emotional content. They're really feelings they're visceral, aren't they? The feelings that are in your body. They're kind of all usually associated around your heart, the emotions, and the way that you feel, sort of very important. So this is the way that he deconstructed that. He went from the physical to feelings. And then the third aggregation is perceptions. And perceptions, sometimes they can be a bit tricky because, sometimes perceptions, we don't quite get them right. But nonetheless, perceptions, when you have a perception, it usually does drive the feeling, and then it will sort of show itself in the physical, in the way that you believe that something is, the way that you believe it to be. So perceptions are always there to, and that's usually more, I sort of see that more as an intellectual thing, more something to do with the brain and the head, the way that you're thinking about this is this way or that way. So, so the perceptions come, and then there's usually a feeling that sort of comes that's centred around what the perception of whatever it is that you're looking at is. But then after that it gets really interesting, because the Buddha then talks about the fourth khandha, the fourth aggregation, as movement of the mind, movement of mind. So, and he again with and again when we come to the Satipatthanas in a minute, you'll see that he was actually really talking about feeling that movement of your mind inside yourself, to understand it inside yourself. So this is all to do with the meditation. When we're practicing meditation, we're looking deeply into ourselves. We're looking at this ability to pick up these vibrations that are inside us, these feelings, and these the way that it does resonate, resounds, the way that the universe itself resounds inside our bodies. Because we are very, very sensitive creatures, and our minds are very, very powerful. In fact, when you look at all of this too, it's probably why we are kind of, in a way, on the top of the food chain, because we do have this ability to self-reflect on ourselves as human beings. We can use our mind to sort of look back onto ourselves, to look back and notice how things are inside ourselves. So that's the fourth aggregation, is the movement of mind, and that can be experienced inside your body, inside your mind. And then the fifth khandha, or the fifth aggregation, is just simply consciousness. So the Buddha, when he's deconstructing this, he went from the physicality of the world, the rupa of the world, and then all the way back to the fifth khandha, which is consciousness itself. And from my way of seeing that, you can just call that, you can, I think, see that as just pure consciousness. So coming back from the other way, you've got this pure consciousness really that he's deconstructed the whole thing to a movement of consciousness. And as that movement of consciousness flows, it starts to flow, and there's lots of evidence where the Buddha sort of talks about this flow of consciousness in all of the things that he talked about in the suttas, and when he was sort of teaching this path, this wonderful path of Buddhism. So this flow of consciousness comes from the stillness, and the consciousness is flowing, and it flows to create. When it is flowing too, we know that it's sort of picking up what he called sankharas, or it's picking up the karma, the karmic influences that are there in our lives. So once, consciousness itself has a purity. It's not moving. It's not sort of doing. It's not creating really anything when it's still. But once it flows, it's in a process to create, and it's picking up the sankharas and the karma, the karmic energy that we have inside ourselves. So it's presenting consciousness that's loaded in a way. It's kind of loaded and biased towards the karma that we've already previously made. It's all there, built into the consciousness. So it's consciousness that sort of holds this information. So that karmic, and this is, I'm sort of jumping around to another list, but the 12 factors of dependent origination, the second factor in the 12 steps of dependent origination are the sankharic episodes that are there. That they come from right there, and then they move into the third factor of dependent origination, which is the movement or the flow of the mind. So this flow of the mind is there, and we can experience this as a flow of consciousness inside ourselves. We can sort of notice that this flow of consciousness is there, and it's there all of the time. It's there when we're born, and it's there when we die. This is how the Buddha taught, so that we can sort of see this flow of consciousness really in all of the beginnings and the ends that are happening in our lives, whether they're, and this is really again just picking up again on the second and the third noble truth. So you've got the first noble truth, which is dukkha, which talks about dukkha. The second noble truth is really the beginning of dukkha, or the beginning of conditioning. So you have conditions that are born. This is the second noble truth. And the third noble truth is conditions have the propensity to finish and die. But then there's, as the 12 steps of dependent origination kind of show us, that eventually it does get to a rebirth, so there's always rebirth. But we can notice that rebirth even in the very smallest of the beginnings and ends that are happening inside our body. So as we're looking in at all of these things that are happening, we can, and certainly in our meditation, when we're sitting meditation, we can sit and we can watch our breath. And with that, you can watch the beginning of a breath, and then watch it move to come to a stop, and then move out where it finishes. So the breath begins and it ends. This is the second and the third noble truth, beginning and ending. And if you look at all of the conditions that get made up, that are there to be found and discovered, really. It's because this whole process is a process of discovery. We're discovering all of this inside our own body. We need to sort of see it that way too, not necessarily just take what the Buddha said on its face value, but to look inside ourselves just to see if this is true, the way that all of this works. So beginnings and ends, and you can, I quite often contemplate this just by looking at, certainly a breath goes very fast, maybe 5 or 10 seconds or so, but then you can look at the beginning and the end of a day, or the beginning and the end of a week, or the beginning and the end of a year, and then sort of moving on even to the beginning and end of a life. And all of this is happening inside this flow of consciousness that's just moving through. So, you get a breath that's very, very fast. It begins and it ends. But then a week maybe begins and ends. And then maybe a year is like this. It begins right and it ends up. But then a life is beginning over here and then right over here and coming back. But you can sort of take this on to look at maybe the beginning and end of epochs, of maybe a world system, this world. We know that it's going to finish a long time in the future from here, but 4,000 million years or something like that. They talk about the Earth being sterilised by the sun. But even beginnings and ends of universes, they all have beginnings and ends. They all conform to the second and the third noble truth. But all this is contained inside this flow of consciousness. So this flow of consciousness that's moving inside us all of the time. So it's really, if we really want to understand Buddhism deeply, we need to sort of to see what he was talking about when he said to look at this consciousness inside of our bodies, just to notice the way that it's vibrating, the way that it's moving, the way that it feels inside your body. So just with that, I'll sort of move on from there just to talk about a little bit about the foundations of mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, because these are just so important, I think, really, for practice, to really make your meditations sing. Because the very first foundation of mindfulness, these are the 4 satipatthanas, the Buddha called them. But the first foundation of mindfulness is really just mindfulness of body. So here the Buddha is encouraging us to be mindful of our body, so to be really aware of just what's happening in our body, to be aware of, and there's sort of many places in the sutras that tell us about what to look out for, just to really know that this body, has those three characteristics that he talked about, that it has the characteristic of dukkha inside it, that it has the characteristic of impermanence. We all know that this body is not going to last forever. It begins and ends. It's been born and it will die. We all know that we've got that to come. We've got our death to come. And so this impermanence is there. This characteristic of impermanence is right there. But the Buddha also talked about the characteristic of no self. He says that there isn't a self there inside all of this movement, inside of this impermanence that's there. He encourages to look deeply, to look just and to know that it is really, there's nothing there. And this is the nature of the way that when we're living our lives blurred across the present moment, this is why the delusion sort of comes into our mind. We think that everything is real, and at a certain level it is. It's certainly relatively, we are alive. I'm certainly sitting here, and I need to eat, and I need to go to the toilet, and all of these sorts of things. So there's a kind of a relative truth about our lives. But the Buddha was pointing us to, or asking us to look deeper, a little bit deeper into these things, to look a bit deeper into the nature of reality. So that's in sort of bringing the whole thing right back into the present moment. And this is right back into the present moment is where the still consciousness lives, where still consciousness is, this consciousness that's there. Because somehow or other we think even a lot of the medicos and medical people and so on will tell you that your brain is really your mind. Well, the Buddha never ever said that. It's not that, and that's just not true. I mean, it doesn't take too much meditation practice to really, to see that that's not true. That we are. That the mind is really very different. It's the mind, if you like, is sort of contained in this flow of consciousness that arises out of the stillness, and this is really where the meditation takes you to when you're sort of looking at this. And when you practice practice with some of these absorption states that you can work with in meditation, you can very easily see how quickly the universe and the world and your body just drops away, just to leave the mind standing forth by itself. Just the mind and its stillness that's there. And then, of course, he's encouraging us to go deeper into that stillness too, because he's telling us that really right inside that stillness there is the doorway to enlightenment. But I won't go there tonight. I'll just stay with the four foundations of mindfulness, and the second foundation of mindfulness is again, he points to feelings. So it's being mindful of the feelings of your body, the feelings inside your body. This is the second satipatthana, the second foundation of mindfulness. So mindfulness of your body, and then mindfulness of the feelings inside your body. And then the third satipatthana is mindfulness of mind itself. Mindfulness of mind. So, and I think for most of us, when we come to that, we will eventually start to see just the way that the mind itself does resonate, resounds, the way that flow of consciousness resounds inside our body. You can start to kind of pick that up and notice it. So this is the third satipatthana. And then the fourth satipatthana, the fourth foundation of mindfulness, is being able to look at the phenomena of mind. So this again is really looking directly at the flow. It's kind of it's understanding the flow of consciousness, but then really looking to see just the creations that are here. This all that's in this hall, all that's in the outside world here, all that's in our world, all that's in our universe. All of this is the phenomena of mind. It's the creation of mind. The fourth satipatthana, the fourth foundation of mindfulness. But we can see eventually, as we start to practice that, we can start to see how we can sort of separate the stillness out of that. We can separate the still consciousness that Professor Donald Hoffman was talking so eloquently about, and really in the way that he's talking, proving beyond any doubt that the brain is not the mind. The mind is well and truly outside of our body and the brain. The brain facilitates the mind, but it is not the mind. The mind is contained in the stillness of this flow, the flow of consciousness that moves from moment to moment, from breath to breath, from moment to moment, from week to week, life to life, and even universe to universe even. So that's a little bit about just what I sort of picked up from what Donald Hoffman was talking about. If you are interested to look at that video, it's quite a long video, and it's not particularly complicated. So if anybody would like to look it up, I would just the one that I saw, the YouTube clip that I saw, was from a man called Tim Ferriss. He was interviewing Professor Hoffman. But if anyone is interested to look at that, you'll certainly see just the confidence and because he's a mathematician, so he's really very confident. It has a very convincing way that he talks about all of this too. So if anyone's interested, you could look up that YouTube video anyway. But anyway, I would like now to move on and just do some meditation with you. And perhaps we can incorporate some of these things into the meditation just so that you get some idea of really how you can use some of these things that the Buddha talked about, some of these lists that he talked about in your meditation. And if there are any questions from in the hall here or from outside on the internet, just please just write them in anyway, and we'll see what we can do to answer them when the meditation is finished. So, if everyone would like to just make themselves comfortable. So I might try and do it just a little different way than what I normally, the way that I normally teach meditation. But right hand on the left is always good, with your thumbs just gently touching and just your hands just nicely, loosely held, so that you can sort of almost feel the sensitivity of your fingers and the way that they're kind of nicely, the way they almost spark. Way your fingers just do that, because I'll focus mostly on that really from the start when we're going into this meditation. So closing your eyes, your head pointing to the ceiling, of course, just making yourself nice and still. Just letting your tongue rest against the palate of your mouth, breathing through the nose, closing your mouth. And just letting yourself relax. So just being with the breath as it's just flowing in and flowing out. And you're just allowing your whole body to relax. From the tips of your toes right up to the top of your head. And if there are any areas of tension or any areas that are causing you troubles or issues, just let it all relax. Move if you need to move now. And just making that affirmation that this time is for meditation and we're not going to allow our minds to wander. But we're just staying inside the body. We're just working with this very first foundation of mindfulness, being mindful of the body. And then you might just turn your attention to your hands and your fingers, where they're just being held lightly together. And as you're just watching and feeling into the fingers and the way that they're almost tingling. Almost like an effervescent feeling, fizzing. Can you feel that in your fingers, around the tips of your fingers, around where there's lots of nerve endings? Just allowing that tingling sensation and just going closer to it, allowing that tingling sensation to really be there. And then I'd like you just to, if you can in your mind's eye, just to take a snapshot of that feeling around your fingers and your hands, the way that it's tingling. Just take a snapshot of it and then just move it to another part of your body. You might want to move it to your thighs or to your upper back. Can you notice there that there's the tingling that's there, the way that on the surface of your skin? Everything is sparking, tingling. You can really feel, you can almost feel the impermanence, the way that your whole body is coming together and moving apart. Your whole body is being born, only to die very, very fast, very fast. The way that everything tingles and feels so effervescent. This is consciousness creating your body. Countless times in the wink of an eye. This is happening. You can feel the movement, you can feel the impermanence that's there. Feel it all around your skin, around the skin of your whole body. You're moving your attention down around your toes and your feet. To see how they're tingling, and then up in your legs and around your knees, into your thighs and around your bottom and your lower back. The whole trunk of your body is tingling. You're feeling, this is the second satipatthana, the second foundation of mindfulness. You're starting to feel into your body. Up around your shoulders and your neck and around your mouth and your lips, especially. And up around the top of your head, on the crown of your head. Notice how pleasant that feeling is. You can always know that when that tingling is there, your body's relaxed. The tensions are abating. And your body is relaxing. Relaxing to the extent that you can even notice the way consciousness itself is creating, building your body, beginning and ending countless times in the wink of an eye. Impossible even to make a measurement of time or space for the way and it's not possible to measure. It's just going so fast. But the wonder is you can feel it. You can feel that tingling, the way your body feels. So we are being very faithful to for the moment, the first two foundations of mindfulness. We're feeling into our body. But already I'm starting to allude to the third foundation of mindfulness. Mindfulness of mind, and we can start to feel and experience the way that all this is coming together so fast. The way that the mind is working with this, building, creating. So we're starting to be mindful of mind. And we can know that mind is really just simply consciousness. And then as we're moving along to the fourth satipatthana, the fourth foundation of mindfulness, just to knowing the contents of mind, so we can see we've got the body, our body, totally in our view. We can feel its movement. We can feel the resonance. This is the phenomena of mind, the creations of mind. And then as we're looking deeply into the mind in this way, we can start to separate the stillness from the movement. We can start to separate the stillness from the phenomena that's being created. The way that stillness is resounding, beginning and ending. And this may take a little time to discriminate between those two, between the stillness of mind and the way that we're conscious of that stillness. The consciousness of stillness is there. But then so is the consciousness of the flow, of the way that consciousness moves. And we can notice that the flow of consciousness is coming out of the stillness. And it's going back into the stillness. It begins in the stillness and it ends in the stillness. So fast. Countless times in the wink of an eye. And then just as we're looking at all of this too, we can maybe just have a look at another list that the Buddha told us to work with. And this is the list of the 5 hindrances. But now as your attention is focused into into your body and the way that you're feeling into your body, you can notice that the usual desires and the aversions, the desires that come, the way that we want to grasp onto different ideas and views and opinions, as opposed, and also that opposed to the aversions, the way that we kind of try to push things away that we don't like. We notice that we're very relaxed. We're very still. And you can notice that those first 2 hindrances, the desire and aversion, they're starting to abate, or they have abated. And you can notice that your mind is quite content as it just sits with the way that the consciousness of mind is just present. We're not sort of caught in the past or not caught up into the future. We're not worried about things from the past. And we're not anxious about things that might happen in the future. We're just content. Because we know that we're sitting with the present moment. We're sitting with the stillness of the present moment. And it is content, brings contentment. You can notice that our mind is content. But also the third and the fourth hindrance, the hindrance of restlessness and tiredness and sloth and torpor, those two extremes, they are also abating, and you can notice that in your body now there's balance, a balance of energy. And that is working to contribute to the contentment you feel, the relaxation that you feel. You start to be able to see that the mind is becoming quite clear. It's not caught up with any troubles or unbalanced energy. Content in the moment, just being with still consciousness. And hopefully too, the fifth hindrance, that of doubt, is also hopefully starting to abate for you. Because as the mind is moving away from worries and concerns and just being content to be in the stillness, that still consciousness. It's a very beautiful place to be. A joyful place, a happy place. I would like you just to take note of how you're feeling. Just to take note of what you've discovered. What you've discovered inside this body. Does it accord with what the Buddha was talking about? Understanding the stillness. Is it the path to peace, as the Buddha said? Is the mind clear? Is there clarity there? You can know this now beyond any doubt. So you can notice and see that you are working with the 5 hindrances. And we are also working with the Four Noble Truths, where we're able to see that we're moving to understand what the Buddha meant by dukkha. As we move away from the extremes, the dualities, that consciousness can present for us to grasp onto, to hold and believe in. We can see that we can work with that. We can even get beyond it. We're using our self-reflection properly. Most importantly too, I'd really love you to understand that this still consciousness is something that's always there. It's always present. It's there to be cultivated. You can cultivate this stillness, amplify it, be mindful of it and bring it right to the fore. So that you're not so lost in the world anymore, not so lost in the past and the future. Really, it means that you can live your life in a way that is leaning more towards truth. You can live your life happily and well. We are born, and we know that we're moving through life towards death. But as the Buddha said, there is this opportunity. As our mind becomes more clear, becomes more able to see and understand what it is that we're involved in. That at our death we can practice and recondition ourselves to move towards enlightenment, to move towards nibbana. Where all of these dualities that are present in our consciousness, where they can come together and unify into the present moment. This is the pathway to the deathless. It's not in the extremes of the past and the future. But right here and now in the present moment. So I'm going to ring the bell 3 times, and on the third resounding of the bell, I'd invite you to open your eyes and come back to the room. Well, I hope that was helpful for you. I know that Ron and Pina have brought along some food tonight, so we can withdraw to the kitchen in a moment and have a cup of tea together and share a bit of food. But just before we do, is there any questions, or is there any questions too from the... Yes. Yeah. Is there a microphone there, Nick, that's...
Test.
Very good, thank you. Thanks, Virginia.
Thanks for tonight. The question is about prana, life force energy or chi.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, trying to sort it, how does that fit in with consciousness? That is consciousness, or that is a part of consciousness? There is more. Can you explain a little bit about that? Because isn't the breath that when we breathe, we actually breathe the life force energy?
Mm.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, consciousness is really something that's there that we all kind of share. We share in a way. We have a collective view of this consciousness we share with each other, but at the same time we have this very personal take on the consciousness. Each one of us, each person, we each have our own portal into consciousness. So that when we're kind of looking through this portal at consciousness, and consciousness is presenting itself in a way that to give us choices that we might want. But at the same time, when we're grasping onto those choices, consciousness is at the same time able to present those choices for us. But all this is happening really in that flow of consciousness that I was talking about. It's all happening in the creation of chi, if you like, the creation of that life force, the life force that's there. And but there is also, like when you look at this consciousness though, there's also, when it's presenting itself to you like that, it's, for most of us, or for really most times, it's usually presenting in the flow of it. It's presenting itself with this, what I was talking about, the sankharas that are there as well. This is the habitual karma that we've been building really over eons of time, really, that it's there. when consciousness is presented to us, it's really presented to us with this karmic imprint that's already there. But what we're practicing here to do, though, is really to look deeper, a little bit deeper at that, because the same consciousness also has this ability to be still. And really anything that's still. You notice this with the way that Ajahn Brahm teaches too, when he's teaching the absorptions of mind, the jhanas. When you make your mind very, very still, you kind of make the consciousness still. What naturally happens is that your body just drops away, the world drops away, the universe drops away with the stillness. As you come closer into the present moment, the stillness will just drop away. Now, what happens to that life force? I mean, it's still inside the consciousness that's there, but the only thing is that the dukkha is not presenting as strongly as what it might usually do, because when consciousness is presented to you to grasp onto, it is presenting, well, first of all with the karmic imprint, but you can, once you get past that karmic imprint and you're looking back at the stillness, well, then you can also be with that and look deeper into the stillness, and then go even beyond that, beyond the stillness, just to see even the consciousness itself has a propensity to finish. Now, this is what I would sort of say, and I think what the Buddha was pointing to as enlightenment. This is really where truth really lives.
Okay, so I'm still asking the vibration. So everything has a different vibration. So consciousness has a different vibration for stillness, for movement. And
basically for those two, for stillness,
yes.
You can certainly notice what the vibration of consciousness is as it moves, and it's very different to what it is when it's still.
Now I'm going to go into the light. So that's another term. So is that another Buddhist term? Is that included, the light? I mean, it's included in many other aspects, but I don't know whether the light is actually... The Buddha talked about the light, that form of, the higher consciousness is the light. We go into the light.
Yeah, and this is certainly the way that the Mahayanans see this too. I'm just sort of doing a bit of study with them at the moment, just to try and understand the Mahayanan principles a little bit more than what I do at the moment. But yeah, that's certainly how they do it. But in the way you're experiencing, though, this consciousness, it could, and I think the way that Ajahn Brahm, I don't really know because he doesn't sort of tell me this, but I think that when he experiences this consciousness, he experiences it more like a light. And certainly when you're moving into into those jhanic absorptions, light plays usually a very big part for a lot of people. You get what you call nimittas there as the mind becomes unsettled, as it's sort of moving to be absorbed. It's moving to unify. It's moving into a unification process, and there's kind of a bit of movement with light and these nimittas. But I think, though, people, from what I can understand in just talking to different people, that these experiences really can be right across all of the senses. That there'll be, because what those nimittas are actually just a reflection from the pure mind. They're a reflection from that still mind, from the stillness of mind. And people will experience them, differently. Sometimes, it is a light. Sometimes it can be more of a bodily feeling, or a feeling like that. Might even be a taste, or
I'm also going to ask about the connection with the chakras. Because as you work with the chakras, then you open consciousness and the flow and the light. Because, the crown chakra, that's connected with oneness. how do you relate the chakras with consciousness and
Well, look,
is that another whole nother evening?
yeah, it is.
Yes,
Virginia,
yes.
I think I'd have to defer on that because I really don't know a whole lot about chakras at all, really. I have to just plead really ignorance around that. I mean, I've obviously read about them and I know about them, but it's sort of moving really more into a Hindu way of sort of seeing things, I think.
Yes, it is. It's basically Hindu, but I think I have heard a lot of Buddhist people too talk about it. You know, and I think Ajahn Brahms mentioned it occasionally.
Yeah, I think it's anyway, it's beyond my remit, I think, or my pay scale to really to comment on that. I don't really know about how and I haven't really contemplated that either, just how the chakras fit into that. But I don't think what I'm teaching here tonight really is just the way that I've understood the Buddhist teachings, and certainly the 4 Satipatthanas, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, are really very important, I think, to know how to feel into your body. And that's basically what he was talking about with those, knowing your body, knowing the feelings of your body, knowing your mind, and then being able to discriminate the mind from the phenomena of mind, the creations that mind makes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Now Ron's going to, I think.
I was just contemplating that where there are the experience of the life forces and the light and so on, that the Buddhist perspective involves just observing them, being there with them, so that the whole lot has the possibility of being, well, just integrated.
Yes. That's a good way to say it, Ron, I think too. Yeah, you're kind of moving towards that unification. Everything is sort of moving together, and as your mind becomes more still, there's just this natural propensity for everything to sort of to drop away and just kind of I think about it as phase transitions. My mind sort of naturally goes to a lot of the physics around this that I've read, but the way that the mind kind of can, as it becomes more still, it allows this world starts to become unified into the mind. And then as you're kind of looking at the mind and you're seeing the mind is like a product of the consciousness, and you start moving into that consciousness, and then you start to see that the mind too will disappear, just the same as consciousness will. And I know that once you start getting beyond that and you start asking what happens next, you've just got to remember that when the Buddha was asked that, what is enlightenment, he just maintained a noble silence. So with these sorts of things, it's very much, very much a personal journey. You've got to kind of learn how to be confident enough in yourself to know what you're looking at, and just checking back, I think, with the suttas and what the Buddha was talking about all of the time, just so that if there are doubts that come up in your mind about these things as you're working with them, to just know what those doubts are, and to see that you are working, inside what the Buddha was talking about. But certainly the 4 Satipatthanas, I think, they give a great realm for our feelings to work. So, yeah, I don't know what else really more to say about that than just what I've said there. But anyway, I hope that's satisfactory for you.
There aren't any questions.
All right, well, that's good. Well, thank you very much for tonight. What we'll do is we'll just pay respects to the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and then you're very welcome to join us in the kitchen for a nice cup of tea and some cake.